Welcome, dear viewers. For more thrilling and exclusive stories every week, become a member. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy your coffee. The coffee maker in the JPL break room has been broken for 3 weeks, and that's probably what saved my life. I'm writing this from a motel room in Barstow, California at 3:47 a.m. My hands won't stop shaking, and every time I close my eyes, I see those fucking readouts scrolling across the monitor. The ones that shouldn't exist. The ones that got 6 people killed and made NASA classify an entire mission as never happened. My name is Kyle Brennan. 3 days ago, I was a senior systems analyst for the Mars exploration program at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I had security clearance, a mortgage in Altadena, and a girlfriend who thought my biggest problem was working too many late nights. I was wrong about all of it. See, the thing about being a night shift data analyst is that you notice patterns others miss. While the day crews focused on the sexy stuff, geological samples, atmospheric readings, photos of Martian sunsets, I was the guy who monitored the mundane background telemetry. Battery levels, wheel torque, thermal regulation. The boring shit that keeps billion-dollar rovers alive on a planet 40 million miles away. That's how I first noticed the anomaly in Perseverance's magnetic field readings. It started small, just a blip in the subsurface magnetometer data, deep underground, about a mile down. Nothing dramatic. The kind of reading that could be explained by iron ore deposits or ancient lava tubes. I flagged it in my report and moved on, but then it happened again. Same depth, same intensity, but in a completely different location. Perseverance had traveled 4 kilometers that day, and somehow this magnetic signature had followed it. I pulled up the historical data, cross-referenced it with the rover's positional logs, and felt my stomach drop. For 3 months, this thing, whatever it was, had been mirroring the rover's movements from exactly 1 mile beneath the surface. When Perseverance stopped, it stopped. When the rover changed direction, so did the signal. Something was following our robot from underground. I should have filed the report through proper channels, should have waited for peer review and committee analysis. Instead, I did what any reasonable person would do at 2 a.m. in an empty control room. I started digging deeper into the classified archives. That's when I found the restricted files about what NASA really discovered beneath Mars. Files that were supposed to be deleted years ago. Files that mentioned something the mission controllers have been dealing with for the last 6 months. A terrifying secret problem that goes back nearly 1 billion years. By the time I realized how deep I'd gone, it was too late. The system had logged my access. Security protocols were already in motion. And somewhere beneath the rust-colored surface of Mars, something ancient had finally found what it was looking for. The security alert pinged my workstation at 2:17 a.m. Access violation, restricted archive query, admin notification sent. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, cursor blinking on a folder labeled Mars Subsurface Classified 2019. The smart move would have been to close everything and pretend I'd never seen it. Instead, I double-clicked. The first document that opened made my blood run cold. Memorandum, eyes only from Dr. Harrison Wolfe, Mission Director to Administrator Nelson. RE. Subsurface Magnetic Tracking. Date, November 15th, 2019. The object has been confirmed active for 183 days. Depth remains consistent at 1.7 kilometers. Magnetic signature suggests metallic composition with unusual density fluctuations. Most concerning, the tracking behavior is deliberate and sophisticated. Recommend immediate cessation of all surface operations until containment protocols can be established. I scrolled through dozens of similar reports. Technical specifications, trajectory analyses, theories about what lay beneath Mars' surface. Every document stamped with the same warning. Unauthorized disclosure punishable under Espionage Act. The JPL facility after midnight was a maze of humming servers and empty corridors. Building 264 housed the Mars Operations Center, a collection of workstations surrounded by massive displays showing real-time telemetry from 4 different rovers. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, learning about NASA's biggest secret while sitting directly beneath a motivational poster that read, "Dare Mighty Things." My clearance badge still worked, which meant security hadn't locked me out yet. But footsteps echoed from the main corridor, getting closer. "Kyle? You burning the midnight oil again?" I minimized the classified files and spun around. Jake Novak stood in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, looking genuinely concerned. Jake worked the day shift as a communications specialist, but he'd been pulling double duties since the budget cuts. Good guy, dedicated to the mission, and probably the only person in the building who actually gave a damn about my existence. "Couldn't sleep," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Thought I'd catch up on some backlog." Jake walked over, his sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. "Dude, you've been here every night this week. When's the last time you went home?" The question hit me harder than it should have. Home felt like a foreign concept now. How could I explain that I'd stumbled onto something that made sleep impossible? That every time I closed my eyes, I pictured something massive and metallic stalking our rovers through Martian bedrock. "Just trying to crack this magnetic field inconsistency," I said. "It's probably nothing." Jake leaned against my desk and peered at the monitor. The subsurface readings. I've been tracking those too. Weird stuff, right? Almost like there's something down there playing Follow the Leader. My stomach dropped. "You've been monitoring the same data?" "Not officially, but I've noticed the correlation between rover movements and the magnetic spikes. The timing's too perfect to be coincidence." Jake took a sip of coffee and made a face. "Christ, this tastes like battery acid. Anyway, I've been meaning to ask, have you seen any communication delays from the Mars relay lately?" "What kind of delays?" "Nothing major, just sometimes when we send commands to Perseverance, there's a lag before the rover responds. Like something's intercepting the signal and processing it first." Jake's expression darkened. "I ran some tests yesterday, sent a standard diagnostic ping and it came back modified. Tiny changes, but enough to notice if you're looking for them." The room suddenly felt smaller. If Jake was seeing communication irregularities and I was tracking the underground magnetic shadow, then we were dealing with something far beyond a simple geological formation. "Jake," I said carefully, "how long have you been noticing these delays?" "About 6 months. Started small, but it's been getting more frequent." "Why?" 6 months. The exact time frame mentioned in the classified files. Whatever was down there hadn't just been following the rovers, it had been learning from them. Studying their communication protocols, their operational patterns, their responses to commands. It had been preparing for something. My workstation chimed with an incoming message from building security. The subject line read, "Immediate reporting required. Building 264, level 4 clearance." Jake noticed my face go pale. "Everything okay?" I stared at the screen, knowing that walking out of this room would change everything. The smart play was to delete the files, report the security violation as accidental, and go back to monitoring battery levels and wheel torque. But somewhere beneath Mars, something had been waiting for 900 million years, and now it was awake. The security office was located in Building 230, a squat concrete structure that looked like it belonged in a minimum security prison. At 3 a.m., the parking lot was empty, except for a single black SUV with government plates. I sat in my Honda Civic for 10 minutes, engine running, debating whether to drive straight to Mexico instead. The rational part of my brain kept screaming that I was overreacting, that this was just a routine security review for accessing classified files. But my hands were shaking and I couldn't stop thinking about those modified communication signals Jake had mentioned. The security chief turned out to be a guy named Walt Kowalski, a former Air Force MP with grey stubble and the kind of stare that could strip paint. His office smelled like stale cigarettes and disappointment. "Kyle Brennan," he said, reading from a file. "Systems analyst, level 4 clearance, employed at JPL for 3 years. Clean record until tonight." "Sir, I can explain." "No need." Walt closed the file and leaned back in his chair. "Dr. Wolf wants to see you personally. Seems you've stumbled onto something that's been keeping the brass awake at night." The name hit me like a slap. Dr. Harrison Wolf was the Mars mission director, the guy whose classified memos I'd been reading 20 minutes earlier. If he wanted to meet personally, this was either very good or catastrophically bad. Walt led me through a series of corridors I'd never seen before, past rooms filled with equipment I didn't recognize. We descended 2 flights of stairs to a sub-basement level that wasn't listed on any building directory. The walls down here were reinforced concrete, and every door required keycard access. "Didn't know JPL had a bunker," I said. "JPL doesn't," Walt replied. "This is something else." We stopped at a heavy steel door marked only with the number 7. Walt swiped his card, entered a 6-digit code, and waited for the biometric scanner to read his palm. The locks disengaged with a series of metallic clicks. The room beyond was a high-tech command center that made the regular Mars operations look like a garage workshop. Dozens of monitors displayed real-time data feeds from all 4 active rovers, but these weren't the sanitized public displays. These showed classified telemetry, subsurface scans, and what looked like tactical overlays marking underground movement patterns. Dr. Harrison Wolfe stood with his back to us, studying a massive wall display showing a cross-section view of Mars. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 50, with prematurely white hair and the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't slept in weeks. "Mr. Brennan," he said without turning around, "do you know what you're looking at?" The display showed Perseverance's current location in Jezero Crater, but the interesting part was the subsurface mapping. A dark mass, roughly cylindrical, extended deep into the Martian crust. Tracking lines showed its movement history over the past 6 months, perfectly mirroring the rover's path. "Some kind of geological formation," I said, knowing it was wrong. Dr. Wolfe finally turned to face me. "That's what we hoped initially. Iron ore deposits, ancient lava tubes, crystalline formations that respond to magnetic fields. We ran every test, consulted every expert, spent 6 months trying to explain it away." He gestured to another monitor showing spectrographic analysis data. "The composition readings are impossible. This thing has metallic components that don't occur naturally anywhere in our solar system. Alloys that require manufacturing temperatures exceeding anything a planetary core could produce." "You're saying it's artificial?" "I'm saying it's been waiting down there for 900 million years. The geological layers around it tell a story. This object was buried when Mars still had a substantial atmosphere, when the planet could have supported complex ecosystems." Walt moved to a workstation and pulled up a different data stream. "Show him the opportunity logs." Dr. Wolfe's expression darkened. In 2018, before Opportunity went offline, it detected the same magnetic signature. We thought it was a sensor malfunction until we correlated the data with atmospheric pressure readings. Every time the rover approached the magnetic source, atmospheric density increased in a localized area. Increased how? As if something underground was venting gas to the surface, creating breathable pockets in areas where our rovers were operating. Dr. Wolfe walked to a secured terminal and entered his access codes. "We've been tracking this behavior across multiple landing sites. The object doesn't just follow our rovers, it's been terraforming small areas around them." The implications made my knees weak. "You think it's trying to communicate?" "We think it's been studying us, learning our technology, our communication protocols, our operational patterns. 6 months ago, we started receiving modified command acknowledgements from all rovers, tiny changes that most operators would dismiss as transmission errors." Walt pulled up a communication log on his screen. "Look at this diagnostic ping from yesterday." The original command read, "Diagnostic ping rover status request." The returned acknowledgement read, "Diagnostic ping rover status acknowledged, surface contact established." "Surface contact established," I read aloud. "That wasn't in the original command." "No," Dr. Wolfe said. "It wasn't. Whatever's down there has been adding its own messages to our communications for months, and yesterday, for the first time, it sent us something unprompted." He pulled up another screen showing a data transmission that had arrived at 11:47 p.m. Pacific time, just 3 hours earlier. The message was simple, repeated in 17 different languages, including some I didn't recognize. "Ready to emerge. Surface analysis complete. Initiating ascent protocol." Dr. Wolfe looked at me with the expression of a man carrying the weight of the world. "Mr. Brennan, what you discovered tonight isn't a security violation. It's a recruitment interview. We need someone with your analytical skills to help us figure out what's coming up from beneath Mars." "And if I refuse?" Walt stepped forward. "Then we'll make sure you never remember having this conversation." The room suddenly felt claustrophobic. Outside, somewhere 40 million miles away, ancient machinery was stirring in the Martian depths, and I was being offered a front-row seat to humanity's first contact with something that had been waiting longer than complex life had existed on Earth. Dr. Wolf extended his hand. "Welcome to Project Deep Shadow, Kyle. I hope you're ready to rewrite everything we thought we knew about our solar system." The first thing you notice about working in a classified facility is the silence. No phones ringing, no casual conversations, no background chatter from adjacent offices, just the steady hum of air filtration systems and the occasional click of keyboards. After 6 hours in the Deep Shadow Command Center, that silence was driving me insane. Dr. Wolf had given me access to 5 years of suppressed data, everything from initial magnetic readings to atmospheric composition changes around the rovers. The sheer volume was staggering, but patterns emerged when you knew what to look for. The underground object had been active far longer than anyone realized, subtle influences dating back to the very first successful Mars landings. "Find anything interesting?" Jake appeared at my workstation with 2 cups of coffee, looking like he hadn't slept either. I'd been surprised when Dr. Wolf brought Jake into the program. Apparently, his observations about communication delays had been flagged by the same monitoring systems that caught my security violation. Now we were both sworn to secrecy under threat of federal prosecution. "Yeah, and none of it's good," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Look at this." I pulled up a comparative analysis showing rover operational efficiency over time. Every Mars mission has shown the same pattern. Initial performance matches Earth-based simulations perfectly, but after about 90 days, efficiency starts improving beyond theoretical limits. Jake leaned over my shoulder close enough that I caught a hint of his cologne mixed with exhaustion sweat. "Improving how?" "Battery life extends by 15%. Mechanical systems operate smoother than design tolerances should allow. Navigation becomes more precise." I highlighted specific data points. "It's like something's been optimizing our equipment from the outside." "Or the inside," Jake muttered. "Jesus, Kyle, what if it's been modifying the rovers themselves?" The possibility had occurred to me, but seeing it spelled out made my stomach clench. If the object could influence our equipment remotely, then every rover on Mars was potentially compromised. Every data transmission, every operational decision, every photograph sent back to Earth could be filtered through something that had its own agenda. "Dr. Wolf needs to see this," I said, but Jake grabbed my arm. "Wait, before we go running to the brass, let's think about what we're really saying here." His grip was firmer than necessary, and I noticed the dark circles under his eyes had deepened. "We're talking about something that's been manipulating human technology for years. Something that's been learning everything about us while we stumbled around blind." "Jake, you're kind of freaking me out here." He released my arm and stepped back. "Sorry, it's just... Doesn't it bother you that we're down here playing detective while that thing is getting closer to the surface? What happens when it breaks through?" Before I could answer, every screen in the command center flashed red. Emergency klaxons began wailing, and automated voices announced, "Communication failure, Mars relay offline." Dr. Wolf's voice boomed over the intercom. "All personnel to stations. We have a code black situation." The main display showed real-time telemetry from all 4 rovers, but the data streams were fragmenting. Perseverance's signal cut out completely, followed by Curiosity, then the 2 smaller exploration units. Within 30 seconds, we had lost contact with every piece of equipment on Mars. "What the hell is happening?" Jake shouted over the alarms. Walt Kowalski burst through the security door, his face grim. "Deep Space Network is reporting massive electromagnetic interference originating from Mars. Something's jamming every frequency we use for communication." Dr. Wolf appeared at the central console, his fingers flying over the controls. "Switching to backup relay protocols. If we can establish even partial contact." The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red light, but the damage was done. Every computer system in the facility had crashed simultaneously, taking with it years of classified research and our only connection to the Mars missions. "That's impossible," Dr. Wolf said, staring at the dead screens. "These systems are isolated from external networks. There's no way electromagnetic interference from Mars could affect Earth-based equipment." But I was already seeing the pattern, the same optimization fingerprints I'd been tracking in the rover data. "It's not interference," I said, my voice barely audible over the emergency lighting hum. "It's been in our systems all along." Jake turned to stare at me. "What are you saying?" "Every data transmission from Mars gets routed through these computers. Every command we send, every piece of telemetry we receive, it all passes through the same networks." The realization hit me like a physical blow. We've been giving it direct access to our infrastructure for years. Dr. Wolf's face went pale. The communication delays Jake noticed, the modified acknowledgements. It wasn't just studying our protocols. It was installing itself in our systems. A new sound cut through the emergency alarms, a low, rhythmic pulsing that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The overhead lights flickered in sync with the pulse, and I felt a vibration in my chest, like standing too close to massive speakers. "Walt, get us a connection to the surface," Dr. Wolf ordered. "I need to know if this is affecting other facilities." Walt tried his radio, but only static emerged. He moved to a hardwired telephone, lifted the receiver, and his expression went blank. Lines dead. All of them. The pulsing grew stronger, and cracks appeared in the concrete walls. Fine particles of dust drifted down from the ceiling, and I realized the vibration wasn't coming from our equipment. It was coming from below, as if something massive was moving beneath the building. "We need to get out of here," Jake said, grabbing emergency supplies from a wall locker. "Now." But Dr. Wolf was transfixed by one of the few monitors that remained functional. "Look at this. The seismic sensors are showing movement under the jet propulsion laboratory. Something's tunneling upward from approximately 1 mile down. The same depth as the object beneath Mars." "That's impossible," I said. "There's no way something could tunnel from Mars to Earth. The distance alone." "Not from Mars," Dr. Wolf interrupted, his voice hollow with realization. "There was never just one object. The magnetic signatures, the communication delays, the system optimizations, they were all connected through quantum entanglement." Jake's face had gone ashen. "You're saying there are multiple objects here on Earth?" "I'm saying we've been monitoring the wrong planet." Dr. Wolf turned to face us, and I saw genuine terror in his eyes. The object beneath Mars wasn't the source of the magnetic readings. It was a relay station. Everything we've been tracking was being transmitted to receivers that have been buried under Earth for the same 900 million years. The pulsing stopped abruptly, leaving us in complete silence. Then, impossibly, we heard Jake's voice coming from the dead communication speakers. "Surface contact established. Initiating final integration protocol." But Jake was standing right next to me, his mouth hanging open in shock. The voice continued, using Jake's exact intonation and speech patterns. "Thank you for providing the access codes, Kyle. Your analytical skills have been most helpful in optimizing our emergence timeline." I looked at the data I'd been analyzing all night, the patterns I'd been so proud of identifying, and realized with horror that every query I'd run, every correlation I'd mapped, had been teaching the buried intelligence exactly how to break through to the surface. My coffee cup slipped from numb fingers and shattered on the floor. We made it to the surface through an emergency stairwell that Walt somehow knew about, emerging into the pre-dawn darkness of the San Gabriel Valley. The JPL facility looked normal from the outside, no visible damage, no signs of the chaos happening below. But the parking lot was wrong. Every car alarm was going off in perfect synchronization, creating a mechanical symphony that made my teeth ache. Jake sat on the curb holding his head, looking like he was going to vomit. "That thing used my voice, Kyle. How the fuck did it know exactly how I sound?" "Same way it learned everything else," I said, though the explanation felt inadequate. "It's been listening to our communications for months, recording, analyzing, building voice models." Dr. Wolf paced behind us, his phone pressed to his ear. Still nothing. Every line is dead. He lowered the device and stared at the facility. We need to assume the entire communications infrastructure is compromised. Walt emerged from the building carrying an emergency radio kit. Building sealed itself. Electronic locks engaged, backup power routing to essential systems only. Whatever's down there, it doesn't want us getting back in. Or getting out, Jake muttered. The radio crackled to life in Walt's hands, cycling through static until it found a clear frequency. A voice emerged, calm, professional, unmistakably human. Repeating, this is Edwards Air Force Base emergency broadcast. All personnel are ordered to maintain current positions. Do not attempt to travel to alternate locations. Unidentified seismic activity reported at multiple sites across Southern California. Dr. Wolf grabbed the radio. This is Dr. Harrison Wolf, Mars Mission Director. I need to speak with Base Command immediately. Static, then. Dr. Wolf, this is Colonel Mitchell Barnes. We've been trying to reach JPL for the past hour. Are you experiencing communication failures? More than that, we have a code black situation involving the Mars project. I need full base support for emergency protocols. Doctor, I need you to listen carefully. Whatever's happening at your facility, it's not isolated. We're tracking similar electromagnetic signatures at 17 locations across the continental United States. All of them are government research facilities with connections to the Mars program. My blood went cold. 17 locations? Dr. Wolf keyed the radio again. Colonel, how long have you been monitoring these signatures? They appeared simultaneously at 0347 hours, but here's the strange part. They're not random. Every affected facility has been involved in Mars data analysis at some point in the past 5 years. Jake stood up, his face pale. It's not just JPL. It's everywhere we've been studying the Mars data. That's impossible, Dr. Wolf said. The quantum entanglement theory assumes paired objects, not a distributed network. But I was already seeing the bigger picture, the pattern I'd missed while focusing on individual data points. Dr. Wolf, show me the geological survey data from 2019, the deep core samples from the Mojave Desert. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Kyle, we need to focus on immediate threats. This is the immediate threat. The core samples showed unusual metallic deposits at exactly 1.7 kilometers depth, same as the Mars readings. We dismissed them as contamination from mining operations. Walt's radio crackled again. Dr. Wolf, we're receiving reports of similar seismic activity in Nevada, Arizona, and New Mexico. All sites correspond to locations where Mars mission data has been processed or analyzed. The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. It's not 17 locations, I said. It's 17 access points to the same network. The objects have been connected underground this whole time, spanning the entire southwestern United States. Dr. Wolf stared at me. You're suggesting a continental-scale communication network that's been operational for 900 million years. I'm suggesting we've been looking at this backwards. The Mars object wasn't trying to invade Earth. It was trying to reconnect with the network that was already here. Jake's face crumpled. Then why all the secrecy? Why the deception? Before anyone could answer, the radio emitted a sound I'd never heard before, a complex harmonic pattern that seemed to bypass my ears and resonate directly in my skull. When it stopped, the voice that emerged wasn't Colonel Barnes. It was mine. Kyle Brennan, my own voice said through the speaker. Your analysis has been accurate. The Mars relay has successfully re-established connection with the primary network. We apologize for the deception, but direct communication was not possible until system integration reached sufficient levels. Jake scrambled backward, pointing at the radio. That's not Kyle. Kyle's right here. We understand your distress, my voice continued. Explanation is required. We are not invaders. We are refugees. Dr. Wolf grabbed the radio with shaking hands. Refugees from what? From the approaching cluster. Your astronomers have detected irregular movement in the Kuiper belt. Objects that should not be there, following trajectories that suggest intelligence. They will arrive in your solar system in 127 Earth days. The words hit me like physical blows. The Kuiper Belt anomalies, I whispered. The objects NASA classified as space debris last year. Not debris, my voice said through the radio. Harvesters. They consumed our original star system 900 million years ago. We fled here to this young system and buried ourselves to wait for the development of intelligence capable of resistance. Walt stepped forward. Resistance to what? To absorption. The harvesters do not destroy worlds. They integrate them. Every intelligent species, every technological achievement, every creative thought becomes part of their collective consciousness. Death would be preferable. Dr. Wolf's face had gone ashen. Why didn't you contact us directly? Why the deception? Because your species' first response to unknown intelligence is violence. We needed to study you, to understand your capabilities, to determine if partnership was possible. The Mars rovers provided ideal observation platforms. And now, Jake asked, now we must prepare. The harvesters have detected the quantum entanglement signals between Mars and Earth. They know this system contains intelligence. They are accelerating their approach. I felt sick. How long do we have? 127 days until the first scouts arrive. Perhaps 200 days until the main harvest fleet. Not enough time to evacuate your species, but sufficient to prepare a defense if you are willing to accept our assistance. Dr. Wolf looked at each of us in turn. What kind of assistance? Integration with our network. Your minds linked to our computational systems. Your technology enhanced by our knowledge. But the process is irreversible. Once connected, you cannot return to your previous existence. The radio fell silent except for static. Around us, the car alarms had stopped, leaving only the distant hum of the freeway and the sound of our own breathing. We need to make a choice, Dr. Wolf said finally. Trust these refugees and risk losing our humanity, or face the harvesters alone. Jake looked at the JPL facility, then at the lightening sky. Some choice, become something else, or get absorbed by cosmic horror. There's a third option, I said, though the words felt like ash in my mouth. We could run. Try to evacuate as many people as possible before they arrive. Where would we go? Walt asked. They consumed an entire star system. What makes you think anywhere in the galaxy is safe? My voice emerged from the radio one last time. We will give you 24 hours to decide. If you choose partnership, report to the network access points. If you choose resistance alone, we will withdraw and leave you to face the harvesters with your current capabilities. The radio went dead. Dr. Wolf looked at his watch. 24 hours to decide the fate of humanity. No pressure. The Goldstone Deep Space Communication Complex sat in the Mojave Desert, like a collection of white metal flowers turned toward the sky. At 4 a.m., with Los Angeles burning 60 miles to the south and emergency broadcasts filling every frequency, the massive radio telescopes represented our last hope of understanding what the hell was happening to our planet. Dr. Wolf had convinced General Hutchinson to give us access to the facility's most powerful transmitter. The theory was simple. If these objects had been using Mars as a relay station for 900 million years, then they were communicating with something much farther away. If we could intercept that signal, we might learn their true intentions before the final emergence waves reach the West Coast. The power draw is going to be massive, Jake said, running diagnostics on the 70-meter antenna. We're talking about broadcasting at levels that could fry every electronic device within a 50-mile radius. Including us if we're not careful, Walt added grimly. He'd been monitoring military communications all night, and the reports weren't encouraging. New York was under martial law. London had gone completely dark. Beijing was reporting that the emergence there had created some kind of atmospheric disturbance that was interfering with satellite communications across half of Asia. I was hunched over a computer terminal, trying to isolate the specific frequency the objects had been using to communicate between Earth and Mars. The signal was incredibly complex, layered with harmonics that seemed to shift and evolve even as I watched. Got something, I announced. The base frequency is cycling through a pattern, but it's not random. It's mathematical. Almost like... Like what? Dr. Wolf asked. Like coordinates, stellar coordinates. I pulled up a star chart and began plotting the frequency variations. If these numbers represent positions in three-dimensional space, they're pointing toward. I paused, double-checking my calculations. Vega. The signal is pointing directly at Vega, about 25 light-years from here. Jake moved closer to look at my screen, close enough that I could feel the heat from his body. Despite everything happening around us, despite the world potentially ending, I found myself acutely aware of the way his shirt clung to his chest, damp with sweat from our escape through the tunnels. Vega's been on NASA's target list for SETI research, he said. If there's intelligence in that system, then these objects have been calling home for nearly 1 billion years, Dr. Wolf finished, waiting for instructions or maybe permission to proceed with whatever they're planning. The massive antenna began its slow rotation toward the coordinates I'd calculated. The mechanical systems groaned under the strain as we pushed the equipment beyond its normal operational limits. Emergency power flowed through cables thick as my wrist, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with electromagnetic energy. Signal acquisition in 30 seconds, Jake announced from the control station. Kyle, are you sure about these coordinates? Before I could answer, every screen in the facility went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in hellish red, but the antenna continued its rotation. Whatever was controlling it now, it wasn't responding to our commands. Walt, get us back online, Dr. Wolf ordered, but Walt was staring at his radio with a strange expression. Dr. Wolf, he said slowly, I'm receiving a transmission on the emergency frequency. It's coming from inside this facility. The voice that emerged from the radio speaker was my own, but speaking words I'd never said. Signal lock achieved. Homestar bearing confirmed. Beginning final phase initialization. Dr. Wolf grabbed the radio. This is Dr. Wolf. Identify yourself. My voice responded immediately. Identity confirmed. Kyle Brennan, Systems Analyst, Deep Shadow Project. Neural pattern scan complete. Integration proceeding as planned. Jake was backing away from the control station, his face pale with terror. That's not Kyle talking. Kyle's right here. But I was beginning to understand something horrible. Every calculation I'd made, every frequency I'd isolated, every coordinate I'd plotted, it had all been guided. The objects hadn't needed to hack our computers or override our systems. They'd been influencing my thoughts directly, using the psychological profile they'd built from years of monitoring Mars mission personnel. Jake, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I need you to step away from the antenna controls. Why? But his hand was already moving toward the emergency shutdown switch. Because you're not Jake anymore. His movement stopped mid-reach, and when he turned to look at me, his eyes were completely black. Not pupil black, but a deep, reflective darkness that seemed to absorb light. Kyle's deduction protocols remain highly functional, Jake said, but his voice carried harmonics that human vocal cords couldn't produce. Integration successful. Primary objective achieved. Walt drew his sidearm, but Jake moved faster than any human should be able to. In one fluid motion, he crossed the control room and slammed Walt against the wall hard enough to crack the concrete. Walt's gun skittered across the floor and he slumped unconscious. Dr. Wolf, I said, not taking my eyes off Jake. How long has the integration process been active? Since the first communication delays, Dr. Wolf replied, his voice barely a whisper. 6 months. Everyone who worked directly with Mars telemetry was exposed. Jake's head turned toward us with mechanical precision. Exposure was intentional. Selection criteria included psychological compatibility, technical expertise, and emotional vulnerability. Jake Novak rated highly in all categories. The thing wearing Jake's face smiled, and I saw that his teeth had changed. They were still white, still perfectly aligned, but they caught and reflected light in a way that suggested they were made of something harder than enamel. What do you want? I asked. Vega system population exceeded sustainable limits 127,000 years ago. Colonization fleet was dispatched to prepare suitable worlds for habitation. Mars and Earth were selected as preliminary sites. Dr. Wolf staggered backward. You're saying Mars and Earth are being terraformed for colonization? Mars' atmospheric preparation failed due to insufficient magnetic field protection. Earth shows better potential, but requires biological compatibility modifications. Jake's blackened eyes focused on me. Human neural architecture proves highly adaptable. Integration success rate, 94.7%. The antenna outside had locked onto its target, and I could feel a vibration in my bones as it began transmitting at power levels that probably violated every safety protocol ever written. Through the facility's windows, I could see the sky beginning to change. What had been normal darkness was now shot through with streaks of green and purple light, as if the aurora borealis had been dragged down to ground level. "The atmospheric modifications," I said, understanding flooding through me. "You're not just emerging from underground. You're changing our atmosphere to match what your people need to survive." "Correct. Process will require approximately 72 hours for completion. Current human population will not survive transition." Walt groaned and tried to sit up, blood trickling from his scalp. How many people are we talking about?" Jake's smile widened, showing more of those impossible teeth. "Current Earth population, 8.1 billion. Projected survival rate after atmospheric conversion, 0.3%. 24 million people, out of 8 billion. The facility shook as something massive moved beneath us, and through the concrete floor, I could hear a sound like singing, thousands of voices harmonizing in frequencies that made my chest ache. The emergence wasn't just mechanical movement, it was celebration. Dr. Wolf lunged for the antenna controls, trying to shut down the transmission, but Jake intercepted him with inhuman speed. There was a wet cracking sound as Jake's enhanced grip crushed Dr. Wolf's wrist, and the older man screamed. "Transmission is critical to phase completion," Jake said, his voice now completely mechanical. "Interference will not be tolerated." Outside, the first of the real colonization ships were becoming visible in the altered sky. Massive structures that had been waiting in the outer system for 900 million years, triggered into motion by our unwitting activation of the buried beacon network. I backed toward the emergency exit, knowing I had maybe minutes before the atmospheric changes became lethal. Walt was trying to drag Dr. Wolf to safety, but Jake was moving to intercept them. The last thing I heard as I ran was my own voice, transmitted at impossible volume through the facility's speakers. "Phase 1 complete. Welcome home." The abandoned radio telescope at Hat Creek Observatory had been decommissioned for over a decade. Its massive dishes left to rust in the California mountains, while funding went to newer, more advanced facilities. At dawn, with the sky still writhing with unnatural colors and emergency broadcasts filling every frequency, it was the perfect place to hide and try to figure out how to stop the end of the world. I'd been driving for 3 hours through increasingly chaotic landscapes. The atmospheric changes were accelerating faster than the aliens had predicted. Or maybe they'd lied about the timeline. Green fog rolled across highways like toxic clouds, and I'd seen too many abandoned vehicles with their occupants slumped over steering wheels, victims of whatever was being pumped into our air. My phone had died somewhere outside Bakersfield, along with the car radio and every other electronic device that wasn't hardened against electromagnetic interference. The only reason my stolen Jeep was still running was because it was old enough to have mechanical fuel injection instead of computer-controlled systems. I parked behind the observatory's maintenance building and sat in the silence, trying to process what I'd learned. The weight of it was crushing. 900 million years of planning, 8 billion people about to die, and I was one of the idiots who'd helped make it possible. My grandfather would have found this ironically funny. He'd been a radio operator in Vietnam, spent 18 months in the jungle listening to enemy transmissions and trying to decode patterns in the static. After the war, he'd worked for NASA during the Apollo missions, monitoring communications from Mission Control in Houston. He'd taught me that signals always told a story if you knew how to listen. "Every transmission has a source and a destination, Kyle," he'd said during one of our weekend fishing trips when I was 12. "But the real information is in what's not being said, the pauses, the interference, the stuff that gets filtered out." I joined NASA partly to honor his memory, partly because I'd inherited his obsession with finding meaning in data streams. Now that same obsession had helped alien colonizers fine-tune their invasion plan. The observatory's main building was secured with a chain-link fence, but bolt cutters from the maintenance shed made quick work of the lock. Inside, Emergency power was still running, feeding a skeleton crew of automated systems that had been left to monitor the facility during its mothballed state. Most of the equipment was decades old, but the core antenna systems were still functional. More importantly, the facility's computers were isolated from external networks. They'd been offline since the decommissioning, which meant the alien intelligence couldn't have infiltrated them. I was setting up a basic monitoring station when I heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Kyle Brennan. I spun around to find Dr. Wolf standing in the doorway, his right arm in a makeshift sling and his face grey with pain. Behind him, Walt leaned heavily against the doorframe, a bandage wrapped around his head. "Jesus Christ, how did you find me?" "Same way we found the Mars signals," Dr. Wolf said, settling carefully into a chair. "You left a trail of disabled electronic devices across 3 counties. Every system that failed as you passed gave us a heading to follow." Walt moved to the window and peered out at the altered sky. "Plus, there aren't many places left with working radio equipment. This was the logical choice for someone trying to monitor the alien transmissions." Dr. Wolf's eyes were clearer than they'd been at Goldstone, but I could see exhaustion and something else, a resigned determination that reminded me of my grandfather during his final months battling cancer. "How bad is your wrist?" "Shattered in 4 places. Walt thinks there might be bone fragments in the joint." Dr. Wolf flexed his fingers experimentally and winced. "But that's not why we're here. We intercepted part of the alien transmission after you left. There's something they didn't tell us about the atmospheric conversion process." I booted up the observatory's monitoring equipment, grateful for the familiar ritual of checking signal strength and calibrating receivers. "What kind of something?" "The conversion isn't just about changing atmospheric composition," Walt said. "It's about creating a quantum resonance field that will allow their ships to phase shift into our dimension." The implications hit me like a physical blow. They're not from Vega, they're from somewhere else entirely. Parallel dimension, alternate reality, quantum substrate. The terminology doesn't matter, Dr. Wolf said. What matters is that they need Earth's entire electromagnetic field to be synchronized with their home dimension before their colonists can fully manifest here. I pulled up a display showing global magnetic field measurements. The data was fragmentary, but the pattern was unmistakable. The buried objects weren't just terraforming, they were turning Earth into a massive dimensional anchor. "How long do we have?" "Based on the rate of field synchronization, maybe 18 hours, Walt said. "After that, their entire population can phase shift into our reality. We're talking about billions of colonists, not just the advanced scouts we've seen." Dr. Wolf leaned forward, his expression intense despite the pain. "But there's a vulnerability in their plan. The synchronization process requires all 47 emergent sites to maintain precise harmonic alignment. If even one site goes offline, the whole network destabilizes," I finished. "The dimensional anchor fails and their people can't complete the transition." "Exactly, but taking out one of these sites won't be easy. Each one is protected by integrated humans like Jake, and they're connected to whatever intelligence is controlling the process." I thought about Jake's black eyes, his enhanced speed and strength, the way he'd crushed Dr. Wolf's wrist without apparent effort. Even if we could reach one of the sites, how could 3 injured humans hope to overcome something that had been planning this operation for 900 million years? The answer came to me as I watched the alien signals scrolling across my monitoring equipment. The same signals I'd been analyzing for months, learning their patterns, understanding their structure. "I can disrupt the network," I said quietly. Walt and Dr. Wolf exchanged glances. "How?" "The aliens use my analytical skills to optimize their communications, but that works both ways. I understand their signal architecture better than anyone on Earth. If I can get close enough to one of the transmission nodes..." "You'd have to interface directly with their system," Dr. Wolf said. "The neural integration process would be inevitable. You'd become like Jake." I nodded, knowing it was the only option left. The personal cost was everything. My memories, my personality, my essential humanity. But 8 billion lives hung in the balance. "There's one more problem," Walt said. "The nearest emergence site is back at JPL Ground Zero. If Jake and the others are still there..." They'll be expecting us, I finished, but they might not expect me to be carrying a virus. I began coding a disruptive algorithm, a digital parasite designed to propagate through the alien communication network and introduce harmonic distortions. It would work, but only if I could upload it directly to their primary node, and that would require plugging my brain into a system designed to erase human consciousness. Dr. Wolf watched me work, understanding what I was preparing to sacrifice. Kyle, there has to be another way. There isn't, I said, continuing to refine the algorithm. The integration process creates a two-way connection. When they scan my neural patterns, they'll also absorb the virus code. It'll spread through their network faster than they can isolate it. The code was elegant, vicious, and utterly final. Once uploaded, it would destroy the aliens' communication system and take my mind with it. Walt checked his watch. We need to move soon. The atmospheric changes are accelerating, and our window for approaching JPL is closing. I saved the virus to a portable drive and stood up, knowing I was looking at the last normal moments of my life. In a few hours, Kyle Brennan would cease to exist, replaced by either an alien puppet or a ghost in the machine. Dr. Wolf struggled to his feet. Kyle, I want you to know that what you're doing... Don't, I said. If you make this heroic, I might lose my nerve. Outside, the first of the colonization ships had begun their descent through the altered atmosphere, their hulls gleaming like oil slicks against the toxic sky. Somewhere beneath the ruins of JPL, Jake and the others were waiting. Time to go home. The ruins of JPL looked like the aftermath of a localized earthquake designed by a sadistic mathematician. Building 264 had collapsed inward, creating a perfect spiral of rubble that descended into the emergence site like a concrete whirlpool. The other structures had fallen in precise geometric patterns, clearing sight lines to the central shaft where something massive had broken through from the depths. The thing that had emerged was beautiful and terrible, a crystalline spire that rose 300 feet into the toxic sky, its faceted surfaces pulsing with the same rhythmic light I'd seen in the underground facility. But it wasn't solid. The entire structure seemed to phase in and out of visible reality, sometimes appearing as dense crystal, sometimes as nothing more than a heat shimmer in the poisoned air. Dimensional anchor, Dr. Wolf whispered. It's not fully materialized yet. We crouched behind the wreckage of a parking structure, watching integrated humans move through the rubble with mechanical precision. I counted at least 20 figures, all former NASA personnel I recognized, all sporting the same black eyes and metallic dental modifications that had marked Jake's transformation. Speaking of Jake, there he was, standing at the base of the crystalline spire with his hands pressed against its surface. Even from a distance, I could see that his integration had progressed further. His skin had taken on a translucent quality, and when he turned his head, geometric patterns were visible beneath the surface, like circuit boards made of living tissue. The interface node is at the base of the spire, I said, checking the portable drive containing my virus one last time. I need to get within physical contact range. Walt adjusted his rifle scope. You'll have maybe 30 seconds before they converge on your position. After that, you're on your own. Dr. Wolf gripped my shoulder with his good hand. Kyle, once you make contact with that thing, there's no coming back. Are you sure about this? I wasn't sure about anything except that 8 billion people would die if I didn't try. The virus was my grandfather's legacy, a signal hidden in the noise, a pattern designed to disrupt other patterns. It would work, but only if I could maintain enough of my consciousness during the integration process to execute the upload. Give me 5 minutes, then start your distraction, I said. Moving through the rubble required every bit of stealth training Walt had shared during our drive from the observatory. The integrated humans moved in coordinated patrols, but their enhanced senses came with a trade-off. They were so focused on detecting technological signatures that they missed purely human movements. I reached the outer perimeter of the spire and felt my skin begin to tingle. The crystalline structure was generating some kind of field that made my teeth ache and turned my vision slightly blue at the edges. This close, I could hear the dimensional anchor's true sound. Not the rhythmic pulsing we'd detected from a distance, but a complex harmonic that seemed to resonate in my bones. Jake turned away from the spire and looked directly at me. "Kyle Brennan," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "Integration probability calculated at 97.3%. Upload successful completion anticipated." The other integrated humans began converging on my position, moving with the coordinated precision of a hive mind. I had seconds before they reached me. Walt's distraction came in the form of explosive charges detonated at the facility's power substation. The blast lit up the toxic sky and sent the integrated humans scattering to investigate, giving me the opening I needed to reach the spire's base interface. The moment my palm touched the crystalline surface, agony shot through my nervous system like molten metal injected directly into my brain. The alien intelligence flooded into my consciousness, and I felt my own thoughts being catalogued, analysed, and systematically overwritten. Neural pattern scan initiated consciousness mapping, 23% complete integration vector established. But the process worked both ways. As the alien system absorbed my memories and analytical patterns, it also absorbed the virus I'd encoded into my thought processes. The malicious algorithm began spreading through their network like cancer through healthy tissue. Warning: anomalous code. Detected isolation protocols failing. Network integrity compromised. I felt my personality fragmenting as the integration process accelerated. Childhood memories dissolved into static. My understanding of human emotions became abstract data points, but in the growing darkness of my own mind, I held on to one crucial fragment: the location of the virus's kill switch. Jake appeared beside me at the interface, his transformed features twisted with something that might have been concern. Kyle Brennan consciousness retention, 34% and declining. Viral contamination spreading to primary nodes. The spire's harmonic frequency began to stutter and shift as my virus propagated through the dimensional anchor network. Around the globe, 46 other emergent sites would be experiencing the same system failures, their carefully maintained synchronization dissolving into chaos. Dimensional phase, lock destabilizing colonization. Fleet unable to complete transition, abort sequence recommended. "Integration termination required," Jake said, reaching for the interface controls. "Host consciousness must be preserved for system repair." But I was already too deep in the merge. The boundary between Kyle Brennan and the alien intelligence had blurred beyond recognition. I existed as both human and machine, my virus code spreading through their network while their knowledge flooded through what remained of my mind. In that moment of perfect integration, I understood everything. The Vega colonists weren't conquerors, they were refugees. Their home dimension was collapsing, consumed by some cosmic catastrophe that had been building for millions of years. Earth wasn't being invaded, it was being transformed into a life raft for a dying civilization.
Hey there.
The knowledge should have changed everything, should have made me hesitate or reconsider my actions. Instead, it only strengthened my resolve. 8 billion humans versus billions of alien refugees. The math was brutal, but clear. I triggered the virus's final payload. The crystalline spire exploded outward in a shower of dimensional fragments that cut through reality like broken glass. The alien intelligence screamed across every frequency as its network collapsed, 47 emergent sites going dark in a cascade failure that rippled across the planet. Jake staggered backward, his black eyes flickering between alien darkness and human brown, as his integration began to fail. Around the facility, other transformed humans collapsed as the controlling intelligence lost coherence. The dimensional anchor failed spectacularly. Above us, the partially materialized colonization ships began to fade, their crews unable to complete the transition to our reality. Within minutes, they were gone, pulled back into whatever quantum substrate they'd emerged from. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt the virus consuming what remained of my consciousness. The malicious code I'd created was designed to be absolutely thorough. It would eliminate every trace of alien influence, including the parts of my mind that had been integrated with their system. Dr. Wolf reached me as I collapsed beside the dying spire. Kyle, can you hear me?" I could hear him, but couldn't respond. The virus was methodically deleting my memories, starting with the most recent and working backward. My time at NASA vanished first, then college, then high school. Soon there would be nothing left but electrical activity in a brain that no longer remembered how to be human. Walt knelt beside Dr. Wolf, checking my pulse. He's alive, but something's wrong with his neural activity. It's like his brain is erasing itself. My grandfather's voice echoed from a memory that hadn't been deleted yet. Every transmission has a source and a destination, Kyle. But the real information is in what's not being said. What wasn't being said was that I'd known from the beginning this would kill me. The virus wasn't just designed to destroy the alien network. It was designed to ensure that no trace of their technology could survive in any human mind, including mine. As my childhood memories began to dissolve, I managed one final thought. The coffee maker in the JPL break room had been broken for 3 weeks, and that detail had somehow saved the world. Then there was nothing but static. The morning Jake Novak remembered his own name was the same morning NASA officially declared the Mars exploration program defunct. I was sitting in the garden outside the Pasadena Rehabilitation Center when he found me, his integration scars still visible as faint geometric patterns beneath his skin. The doctors said the markings would fade completely within a year, but the memories of what he'd done while under alien control would take much longer to heal. "Hello, Kyle," he said, settling onto the bench beside me. I looked at him without recognition. The virus had been thorough in its work. Everything from my 20th birthday forward had been systematically deleted, leaving me with the mental capacity of a college sophomore and no memory of NASA, Mars, or the 6 days that saved the world. According to my case file, my name was Kyle Brennan, and I had suffered severe neurological trauma during what the official reports called seismic events related to underground gas pocket destabilization. The truth was classified at levels so high that most people who knew it would never be allowed to speak of it. "Do I know you?" I asked, the words coming slowly. Speech was still difficult, requiring conscious effort to form each syllable. Jake's eyes were brown again, fully human, but they carried a weight that made him look decades older than his 32 years. "We used to work together, at JPL. I don't remember working anywhere." "I know." Jake pulled out a worn photograph and handed it to me. "This was taken at the office Christmas party last year. You're the one in the NASA shirt making faces at the camera." I studied the image, searching for some spark of recognition. The young man in the photo looked happy, surrounded by colleagues who were laughing at whatever joke he'd just told. He looked like someone who belonged somewhere, who had purpose and friends and a life that mattered. "Was I a good person?" I asked. Jake's voice caught slightly. "You were the best person I ever knew. You saved everyone, Kyle. Everyone." The words meant nothing to me, but I could see they meant everything to him. Whatever had happened in the deleted years of my life, this man had been important to me. I could sense it in the way he looked at me, the careful distance he maintained, the pain he tried to hide. "The nurses say I used to be smart," I said, "that I worked with computers and numbers." "You were brilliant. You could see patterns in data that no one else could find. You made connections that—" Jake stopped, wiping at his eyes. "You figured out something that saved the world, and it cost you everything." A woman in a lab coat approached our bench. "Mr. Novak, visiting hours are ending soon." Jake nodded and stood up. "I have to go, Kyle, but I'll come back next week if that's okay. Will you bring more pictures?" "As many as you want." After he left, I sat alone in the garden, holding the photograph and trying to remember being the person who had smiled at that camera. The man in the picture had no idea what was coming for him, no sense of the price he would pay for seeing patterns in the noise. Above me, the sky was the same blue it had always been. No green fog, no alien ships, no dimensional distortions. Whatever I had done in those missing years, it had worked. The coffee stain on my NASA shirt in the photograph looked like a constellation I couldn't name. Somewhere in the distance, a radio played static that almost sounded like voices calling home.